Recording in progress.
Welcome, everyone, to the September 20th, 2021 regular Board of Aldermen meeting. Would everyone please join with me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Alderman Plufka.
Here.
Alderwoman Tice. Here. Alderwoman Sims. Here. Alderman Weggie.
Here.
Alderman Gould.
Here.
Alderman Lockmiller.
Here.
Alderwoman O'Neill. Alderman Shelton.
Here.
All members are present.
Great, thank you. Well, welcome, everyone. We haven't had a full house in a number of months, so it's wonderful to see us all together. Next on the agenda, item 3, announcements, appointments, proclamations, and recognitions. We have 2 items. The first is item A, officer award and swearing in of 3 new police officers. So, Chief, are you handling this, or is Major? Yes, sir. One of our majors? Yeah.
Arvola, is Bola doing it, or are you doing it, or? Go ahead.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening. We have 3 hires that took place in the last month or so for the police department. We'd like to swear them in this evening. I'm going to read a. You going to read this? Okay. Well, you.
Unless you want me to.
She wrote it. You wrote it. I thought you might want to read it. I'll read it. Our first officer. Javi, can you come up? Stand right here, please. Amir Habibovic, we call him Hobby, was born in Bosnia. His father was a career military man there in Bosnia and a mother who was a businesswoman. His dad was actually in a concentration camp and was a genocide survivor of the Bosnian-Serbian War back in those days. They have since immigrated into the United States in the early 2000s. Hobby spent his teen years and most of his 20s in Connecticut, where he learned English and Spanish with the goal of working in public safety. Hobby is a proud father to twin daughters, Amelia and Alexandra, and they have been an incredible addition to his family. Hobby's worked many jobs in the public safety field already, including a corrections officer, a police officer with the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department, prior to receiving the opportunity to work here with us in the Brentwood Police Department. This is Officer Hobby. The next one is Steve Ortnaw. Steve is 31 years old and the oldest of 4 brothers and sisters. He was born and raised in South St. Louis. Steve has been in law enforcement for a little over 4 years and did his previous tour with the city of St. Louis in District 6. When he's off work, Steve loves to be at home with his fiancée Erica and their 4-month-old son Lincoln. Both of them are the best thing that's ever happened to him. I think that's his words, not Angie's. Outside of his family, Steve enjoys going to the gym, and he is a martial arts person and specializes in jiu-jitsu. So welcome to Steve Ortnaw to the Brentwood Police Department. I'd like to mention the 3rd officer that's coming up, Tim Lockenick. We call him TJ. Again, a little word of thanks to the board. This was the officer that was in the academy that we cherry-picked out of the academy. So he was the best and the brightest. TJ's married to Sam Lockenick. They have 2 sons, Jace and Brody. The Lockenick family resides in Fenton, but TJ grew up in South St. Louis. TJ has several family members that were in law enforcement, including his dad, who retired from the St. Louis City Police Department. He went to Our Lady of Sorrows grade school in South St. Louis and eventually to St. John Vianney High School in Kirkwood. TJ played ice hockey all through grade school and high school and some after high school. After high school, he went to St. Louis Community College. He managed a retail hockey store in Kirkwood for several years. And most recently, he was working as a dispatcher prior to going into the academy for the St. Louis County Police Department. TJ graduated from the Eastern Missouri Police Academy on September 2nd and started with us on the following day. So welcome, Officer Lockenick.
I have to lower this down. We will start with Timothy Lockenick. Swearing in. I, Timothy Lockenick, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and of the state of Missouri, the ordinances of the city of Brentwood,
the ordinances of the city,
and that I will faithfully
that I will faithfully
and diligently
and diligently
demean myself
demean myself
at all times
at all times
while serving as a police officer
while serving as a police officer
for the city of Brentwood,
for the city of Brentwood,
for which I am officially appointed
for which I'm officially appointed
on the 7th day of September 2021.
on the 7th day of September.
Thank you. Amir Habibovic. I, Amir Habibovic,
I, Amir Habibi,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution
and of the state of Missouri
of the state of Missouri
and the ordinances of the city of Brentwood,
and the ordinances of the city of Brentwood,
and that I will faithfully and diligently
and that I will faithfully
demean myself
demean myself
at all times
at all times
while serving as a police officer
while serving as a police officer
for the city of Brentwood,
for the city of Brentwood,
for which I am officially appointed
for which I am officially appointed
on this 26th day of July 2021. Of July 2021. Sorry about that. The remaining officer, Stephen Ortnaw. I, Stephen Ortnaw,
I, Stephen Ortnaw,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support
the ordinances of the city of Brentwood, and that I will faithfully and diligently
that I will faithfully
demean myself
demean myself
at all times
at all times
while serving as a police officer
while serving as a police officer
Brentwood,
for the city of Brentwood,
for which I am officially appointed
for which I am officially
26th day of July 2021.
on this 26th day.
Oh, me?
We have one more item under 3A.
Yes, sir. To preface this award real quick, our fire personnel were not awarded by us. I don't know if Ronnie's doing it. Police officers don't get the opportunity to do what you're going to hear quite as frequently as the fire department does, quite frankly. So this award pertains to an incident that happened here in Brentwood on August 20th, 2021. It was a tragic incident at the pool at the Van Markway Apartments. Corporal Nick Lang was the officer that got the call and arrived very quickly on the scene. So we are awarding Nick a life-saving award. On August 20, 2021, Brentwood officers were dispatched for a call of a drowning at 72 Van Markway. Although he was not assigned to the call, Corporal Lang responded and was the first officer on the scene. Corporal Lang observed a civilian performing CPR on a juvenile patient on the side of the community pool. Corporal Lang took over for the civilian and began performing CPR as well as rescue breathing on the patient until members of the Brentwood Fire Department arrived and took over life-saving efforts. Once relieved, Corporal Lang immediately began to identify and interview witnesses on the scene. After EMS transported the victim to the hospital, Corporal Lang assisted with driving the victim's siblings to the hospital where they met the mother of the victim. Prior to leaving the hospital, the staff informed Corporal Lang that the victim had acquired a pulse. Corporal Lang's decisive action until EMS arrived was critical in keeping the patient alive. Additionally, Corporal Lang showed great care and compassion in dealing with the siblings and mother of the victim. Corporal Lang should be recognized for his actions and demeanor, which are in step with the greatest traditions of the law enforcement profession. Congratulations.
Okay. That brings us up to item 4B under announcements, and there is just one, and that is the appointment to the Economic Development Sales Tax Board. We had one person who was on the board. As you probably know, the school district or a member of the school board sits on the EDST, and that individual, and that was, I think, Mark Warmer, who it was, he's not on the board anymore, so that created an opening. School board needed to appoint somebody, and they recommended Jamie Allen. If we all know Jamie, I think we all probably do. And so I think that's a terrific suggestion, and so I would like to appoint Jamie Allen to the Economic Development Sales Tax Board. So can I get a motion to recommend that?
So moved.
Second?
Okay, and all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, motion carries. We'll let Jamie know. Thank you, everybody. Brings us down to item 4, the agenda approval. There is one item that I would like to remove from the, bear with me here, I just got disconnected, from the agenda. You should have received an email from me last Friday, and that is to remove under old business.
9A.
Thank you. 9A. Can we get a motion to remove 9A from tonight's agenda?
So moved.
Okay, do you have any discussion on that, folks? Yeah, I'm sorry, Kevin?
I believe the motion that you discussed was also to withdraw the bill from further consideration.
Right, to remove it from tonight's agenda and to withdraw it from further consideration. We're going to go back to the drawing board. Yes?
The reason?
Well, we're going to go back to the drawing board.
Okay.
I was kind of the person, I won't say I was responsible for this, but I was wanting to see some changes to the ARB, and I don't think I really communicated the changes that I was looking for to the board. And so I think the board was kind of shooting at a moving target. So I think it's best if I try this all over again, because I think there are some things that we can do to improve the Architectural Review Board. I think it's important that we keep that concept. As you probably know, I was involved in putting the ARB together back in 2004, so it's not that I don't think it's a good idea. I think it's absolutely vital. I think it serves a very, very important purpose for the residents, and but I think that they're a little overtaxed, and I will talk to you a little bit more about that and see if we can come up with some changes that we might be able to make. So that's the reason. Any other questions? Okay.
I'll amend my motion so that we
Thank you.
take this off the agenda and remove it
From consideration.
from consideration.
Great, thank you. Your second is good on that? Yes. Okay. Any further discussion? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, everyone. Yes.
I'd like to also make a recommendation for an amendment.
Yes.
I would like to move that we table item 10A, Resolution 1316, from tonight's agenda, and direct staff to provide additional expert consultation, background, and options that include incentives versus a mandate for the board to consider.
Is there a second to remove resolution number 1316 from tonight's agenda?
Second?
Got a motion and a second by Alderman Lockmuller. Any discussion on that?
If I may, I'd like to give a little bit of background of why I'm recommending this. So I'm against the resolution as it's written. Not because I don't believe that the vaccine makes a big difference in fighting the tragic effects of the virus and preventing some severe disease and hospitalization and death, but especially for our most vulnerable and immunocompromised in our community. In addition to the vaccine, in the last 18-plus months, there's been proven measures of staying healthy and mitigating the effects of this virus that are also safety protocols that must remain in place no matter what. Those things are staying healthy by boosting immune systems, masking when necessary, and appropriate, practicing good social distancing indoors around crowds, and testing and staying isolated when you have symptoms. But mandating, coercing health decisions on our employees seems like more symbolic and checking the box action rather than solid evidence of protecting our employees. And I'm afraid that this mandate may create more problems than it solves. When I was on the Ways and Means Committee, I asked an important question of whether or not this was influenced by issues that we're seeing or have been seeing in the departments, and the answer was not really. Furthermore, I haven't heard a single citizen raise an issue of this concern. Perhaps there are, but doesn't seem to be a priority they're talking about. When I mentioned it to some, they could conceivably understand why the staff that's at most risk of exposure there may be an issue, but people who have no contact with the public, like those collecting our trash or cut grass, seems to be excessive. We already have a very high vaccination rate, 85 to 86% plus, which is fantastic, and I'm glad that that's the case. So my big question is what's the real purpose of this resolution? The first line of the resolution states to create, and I quote, to create a safe environment free of infection, transmission of disease, unquote. The only case to mandate is that if we could actually promise that, and even with vaccination status of 100%, and achieving complete protection and sterilization immunity is unfortunately unattainable right now. And the reality is that it's impossible as we learn more about Delta variant, variants of concern, and variants of interest. Even the CDC director recently stated the Delta variant is showing every day that its willingness to outsmart us. None of this resolution takes into consideration those that have natural immunity due to already receiving or recovering from COVID and have protective antibodies.
Alderman Gould, if I could just interrupt you just for a second. I think that, and you can disagree with me, but the motion, I think, is to remove this from tonight's agenda.
Yeah.
And I think it was because you were wanting some additional expert
I do.
input.
I'm getting to that.
Okay.
I'd like to.
I just want to make sure you weren't arguing the merits.
No.
Okay.
What I'm asking is that I believe that even Bola had mentioned during the Ways and Means that there are other ways and other alternatives that we could look at as it relates to incentives. And I think a carrot versus a stick incentive approach to thoroughly explore and to make sure that we have a thorough understanding of the implications of a decision like this. We have expert opinion on everything from ADA compliance of a short path to compensation of our employees, but yet we've not heard from an actual expert on consultation of something of this magnitude that might cost people's livelihoods. I think it warrants us to vet those and make sure that a decision this extreme is going to be something that we haven't looked at other ways to encourage the small percentage that's still left to get vaccinated.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else care to, again, if we could just limit it to what the motion is, instead of getting
It's
to
just
the
tabling it and asking for more.
Right. Instead of arguing the substance of the policy, the mandate itself, if we could, to the extent you have any input, any questions concerning Alderman Gould's motion, which is simply to table this tonight until there's an opportunity to bring in some expert.
And some additional other options of incentive. What would it look like if we did an incentive program versus a mandate at this point?
Okay.
And see what that looks
Okay.
like.
Did you?
Yeah,
go ahead.
I have the same concerns that Alderman Gould has, and I support his motion.
Okay. Anybody else have any comments? Alderwoman?
I'll argue the opposite. In there, having just come back from Canada, Canada's health insurance does not pay for Americans who want to come back to our country and have a COVID test. They have more regulations than I could believe. You need Plan B and C, and their vaccination rates have gone down. And I think you could always look at what is impossible, but I think you need to do as much as you can. You need to set a goal and go for it. And saying that we can't do this because it's impossible, let's reach higher. Let's put in something that encourages everybody to do this, because that's the only way we're going to get this whole thing done.
Well, before we go back to your, I'm sorry, did it?
Just,
Yeah.
I mean, it's just about whether to take the item off the agenda.
Yeah.
Right.
So I would just ask
That's
we
the only motion.
focus.
That's the motion at this
Focus
point,
the
is whether
inquiry
to
on
take it
that.
off the agenda. Again, I'm trying to get you to limit it to that, not the substance of it. Alderman Plufka.
Yeah, to that point, I don't know that we're going to learn anything more. We can all dream up scenarios of incentive rather than mandate, but I don't know how an additional period of time is going to help us come up with some alternative that's going to gain some sort of consensus. And as for expert testimony, I mean, I think this is the one topic we've had exhaustive expert testimony on all sides from every single source in the world, from print media to the internet to cable television to all of that. I don't know that there's a stone that's left unturned at this point as to who understands what the efficacy of the vaccines are and things like that. So as to the specific motion of tabling it for additional information, I'm opposed to that.
Anyone else? Okay, all in favor of the motion to table Resolution 1316, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
All right, in the opinion of the chair, the motion fails. Yes, Alderwoman Tice.
I'd like to make another change to the agenda. I'd like to add under City Administrator's Report, a resolution to direct staff to do an appraisal on the property at 9321 Litzinger Road.
Second.
All right, we've got a motion to do that, and a second. Any further discussion on that? And Bola, will that be, all in favor of making that change by adding that to the city administrator's report, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion does carry. So it will be added under city administrator's report. Will that be in the form of a resolution there, or is it just a
No, it's
motion
just a motion.
authorizing?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you. So with that, then, any other changes to the agenda? Any objection to approving the same as amended by acclamation? Seeing none, it will be approved. Thank you. That brings us to item 5, citizen comments. Anybody in the public care to address the board? Now is the time to do so. You will be given up to 3 minutes. And Kelly, you will let me know if there's anybody online that wants to? There is anybody? Okay, great. Thank you. We will move on to mayor and alderman reports. First up is the mayor, and I do have a few. First, I think I'm supposed to read this to the board, this announcement about Thursday night. Is that right? Okay. This coming Thursday, the city of Brentwood is hosting the Fall Municipal League of Metropolitan St. Louis membership meeting at 7:15 here at the City Hall. Refreshments will be served at 6:30, and I would like to be able to introduce the board and have you join me in hosting this meeting. Please confirm with Kelly if you can attend. This invite is extended to members of the management team and their commanding staff and senior management as well. This was the meeting that we were supposed to have at City Hall back in March of 2020, and it was right as City Hall was reopening after the massive renovation, and then COVID came along and kept us from having that meeting. And since that day in March of 2020, the Municipal League has not met in person. So this will be the first meeting in person of the members of the Municipal League. And for those listening, the Municipal League are all 89 municipalities plus the city of St. Louis and St. Louis County. It's a body of all these organizations to help each other collaborate where we can, and it's a terrific organization. So if you can make it Thursday night, that would be great. If not, I completely understand. The other items, census data. Census has been completed and the data has been released. The good news is that the city of Brentwood is up 2.2% as compared to 2010. By my math, we're up by 170-something residents, and not sure where that is. And I know staff is going to do some deep dive into these numbers and try and figure out all this. But I know Alderman Wegge had some real interesting takes as well from reviewing the data in the change of the population in Brentwood over those 2 years. We fared better than a lot of the other municipalities. We spoke about this at, I'm on the executive board for the Municipal League, and we had a meeting last Thursday, and we talked about the census data, and we fared better than a lot of other municipalities, even though we had a somewhat modest growth. A lot of the North County municipalities saw a tremendous decrease in their population. Probably one of the hardest hit was the city of Champ. They went down 23% when they lost 3 of their 13 residents. So they're down to 10 now. This does show that there, as you know, a lot rides on a city's population. For example, when you think about the federal funds that we got, the COVID funds, it was all based on your population, pro rata distribution. So it's important. That's why we were striving to get people to complete the census form, because it helps us in a lot of different ways. And finally, we will be looking at maybe some modifications to the ward boundaries depending on the how this all breaks down. And BOLA has told me that we did this in 2010. There were slight modifications. I think maybe the south side of Harrison was moved from Ward 1 to Ward 3, and that was about it. But anyway, in charter cities, you have to have a committee to deal with that. Fourth class city, we do not have to have a committee. So I think we're going to take a look at what changes, if any, need to be made, and we'll get back to you on that. As I said, I'm on the executive board for the Municipal League. We had a meeting last Thursday, and one major topic of discussion, because there was Councilman Mark Harder, who's with St. Louis County, and Alderwoman Kara Spencer, who's with the city. One thing that they were talking about a lot is the problems that they're having with the police force, both with the county and the city, with people leaving and moving out. You may have read about this in the paper. I thought it was kind of a timely discussion on Thursday morning when, over the weekend, then we read the front page article about how St. Louis City Police Department are losing police officers hand over fist to some of the surrounding communities. St. Louis County is as well, and it was a major topic of discussion at the board on Thursday. So a lot of us are concerned about that, and we're looking at ways to try and slow that down, and to the extent we come up with things, I will bring that back to you as well. Another thing is, this summer, I received a letter a couple of weeks ago from, and I'm going to read this so I don't misstate it. I received a letter from the general manager and the site lead for a major Brentwood business. This wasn't publicized because everything worked out well, but during the summer, this business had an employee that caused concern to the employer by coming to work with a gun and exhibiting some very concerning behavior. But because of Chief Speace's experience in de-escalating these workplace incidents, and with the help of Major Hawkins, Sergeant Chris Gibbons, Sergeant Nick Stanzi, and the other officers that provided the extra patrols at and around the business's location, any problems were averted. Thank you to Chief Speace and all involved in providing excellent protective services to this business and by extension to the residents of Brentwood. Again, that was a letter that I received from the GM about the terrific job that our police officers did with that potentially dangerous situation. And finally, we had an event this past week, when the Brentwood Backyard Bash, and we have a lot of thanks to give out. I think if to say it was a successful event is somewhat of an understatement. I want to take this opportunity to recognize and thank Janet, Susan, and Kelly for all the work that they did with the parade. That thing went off without a hitch, and I think the best analogy or metaphor, whatever the appropriate word is that of an iceberg. When you look at an iceberg, you see just the tip. You don't see the big body of the block of ice underneath the surface, and that's the same thing that I took from the parade. What we saw was a well-executed parade, thanks to those 3 individuals and anybody else that helped out. But we didn't see all the work that went in behind the scenes, and I know that they had been working on that for quite some time. So thank you again, Susan, Janet, and Kelly. Also, I want to thank Eric and his staff for packing in as much as humanly possible in a 6-hour event that one could. All you have to do is take a look at the social media since Saturday night and see that the residents were very happy with how that went. So hats off. Thank you very much, Eric, and to the rest of your staff for putting together what was really a successful event. And finally, I want to give a special thank you to Alderman Plufka for getting us the mini motorbikes, the guys riding around on the motorcycles, even though their music was not necessarily my choice. Yeah, they got everything rolling in a sense, and also Alderman Plufka was responsible for Archibald Eagle being in attendance and the special vehicle that he was riding. All again efforts of Alderman Plufka, and finally Alderman Plufka was able to get a Archibald Eagle as an honorary Brentwood Eagle for the day. And they had so much fun doing that event that they told me they want to come back and do it again next year. Be a regular in the parade.
Yep.
So thank you, Alderman Plufka, for all your hard work on that. So with that, I have nothing else, and we will turn it to Alderman Plufka.
Thank you. I'll extend that thank you to the folks in Public Works for helping set up the parade route and all the work that they did down on the grounds of Brentwood Park, to our police department and to our fire department for their participation in the parade, as well as all the work that they did on Brentwood, the Backyard Bash. It's very true. The folks that I kind of recruited to help to just come be a part of our parade, to a person, were really excited about being here. And once they got to see the neighborhood and the families and got to interact with our residents, they're all excited about wanting to come back and doing it again. So it's really a fun event, and it was I know it was not the same as every year, different time and all that, but it was great. It was great fun, and it was just it really showed off a lot of what's really great about living and being in Brentwood. So thank you to all the departments for their work. Ward 1 has a meeting tomorrow night at 6:30 at the Rec Center. Nancy and I will be there, and we hope you are there as well to discuss the hot topic issues of Brentwood as it concerns Ward 1 or the rest of the city. So, thank you.
Thank you. Alderwoman Tice.
No, David gave my report, so no report.
Okay. Alderwoman Sims.
No report, except I echo the sentiments of Alderman Plufka.
Alderman Weggie.
Yeah, I would just like to tertiary thank everybody for the great event. One experience for me, we had a new family move in a couple weeks ago into our ward, and they were there, and they were, minds were blown, and like, this is an amazing event. Like, well, wait till next year, it's just an amazing town. So also, I waited in front of the obstacle course for about 4 hours, and I did not see any other aldermen show up. So my time was 122 seconds. Now, we did not write that down or have any kind of verifiable data on it. So I assume we won.
I will give you the cup after the meeting.
That's a good job, Sonny. All right. Ward 2 is number 1.
Congratulations to Ward 2 for mastering the obstacle course.
It was called Toxic.
Although I think Amber with Parks and Recreation could probably put everybody to shame.
Oh, for sure.
Is that it?
That's it. Thank you.
Okay, Alderman Gould.
I echo the sentiments. I had many. I was there from the parade to fireworks, which was a long, hot day. But I had a lot of residents that said, I thought I was going to miss all of the other rides, but this is fantastic, and it feels like a community event. So many of them told me to pass along those sentiments and thank whoever was responsible. So amazing. The next Ward 3 meeting is scheduled for next Tuesday. What is that, the 28th? Yes, 28th at 7 p.m. We're actually probably going to move that to a virtual meeting. So look at the website for instruction on that.
Alderwoman O'Neill. I'm sorry, Alderman Lockmiller. I'm going back and forth here.
That's all right. I've decided to cancel due to the lack of any action items, the Public Safety Committee meeting, which was going to be Wednesday of this week. Another item, another event that we should all attend is our own police and fire are going to put on a softball tournament called Battle of the Badges. It's to benefit backstoppers. There'll be several other municipalities there. First game starts at 10. The championship game is at 5. That'll be played down at the formerly Brentwood Park baseball diamond. There'll be further details to follow. Thank you.
Thank you. Chief Cottrell, is the fire department participating in that? Okay, all right. Separate teams, or are you joining with the police force? Oh, all right. Oh, my goodness. Okay, well, you definitely are not going to want to miss that event.
It's a game.
Alderwoman O'Neill.
Yes, so accolades first. The Backyard Bash got comments from people about the noise level, that so many people liked the quieter ambiance, not the noise of the barkers and all that, and they just felt it had a more community, family appeal to them. And I wanted to pass that on as something that I noticed once they pointed it out. So I kind of felt like it was the county fair where I grew up, where I wanted to go to the 4-H bin and see the sheep the kids were raising. It had that kind of attitude, and I think that's great. So a great job. Also, accolades to Karen. I'm hearing wonderful comments about the transition from the summer flowers and the planters to the fall arrangements. They're always wonderful. She uses such a variety of greenery, and it's just great. They always get good comments.
The city's horticulturalist.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then last, maybe Jack was going to say this, Brentwood Forest is having its condo association meeting next Tuesday. We will be there as part of that for anyone who wants to come and be aware of Ward 4 and the condo association events.
Okay, Alderman Schultz.
Yep, just real quick, I'd echo what everyone else said about the Backyard Bash. I had some out-of-town family, and we took them down there for a little bit, and they were amazed that this kind of thing happens around here. And I'd also like to give a shout-out and thanks to Dan. We had an issue, I guess it's going to be an ongoing issue with some construction going on to the north of Ward 4 in Richmond Heights, and Dan was very quickly responsive and even went above and beyond and offered to reach out on behalf of the city of Richmond Heights to help our residents. So thank you, Dan.
Thank you. Okay, that gets us to the city administrator report. Brentwood Bound update.
Good evening.
Craig?
Craig Schlitter with Navigate Building Solutions. Starting with construction costs, $1,738,314.19 was spent since the last board meeting. Going to soft costs, $97,162.66 was spent on material testing, destination playground design and engineering, development consulting fees, and legal fees. There were no property acquisition expenditures, and there were no updates to the funding sources below.
Any questions for Craig? Okay, thank you. Thanks, Craig. Bola?
The next item is a motion to direct the city administrator to obtain an appraisal for the Mount Calvary Lutheran Church property at 9321 Litzinger Road.
Okay, can we get a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second?
Okay, we got a motion by Alderman Tice, seconded by Alderman Plufka. Any further discussion? Everybody understand what this is all about? Okay, great. Seeing none, then I think we need to do a roll call since this is spending money. Is that right, Kevin? Roll call, please.
Alderman Plufka?
Yes.
Alderwoman Tice?
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims?
Yes.
Alderman Weggie?
Yes.
Alderman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller?
Yes.
Alderwoman O'Neill? Alderman Shelton?
Yes.
Vote is 8-0 in favor of this change, this approval.
And I apologize. Probably should have had somebody explain what we were doing there, just for the public. We all know what this
I
is
can
about.
explain.
Yeah, if you want to go ahead.
Do you want to? Go ahead.
So this is a particular interest of residents in Ward 1. The Mount Calvary Lutheran Church is looking at potentially selling the land behind the church, the large grassy area in the back, and they have real estate agents that they're working with, and they're marketing this both to developers who might build homes there, and they've talked to the city And so this is just getting an appraisal on the land so that then we could have the discussion about whether or not the city is interested in purchasing that land. So just the first step so we can have the discussion.
Yeah, and that's just to come up with the value for, I mean, this is a discussion that we've been having with the church for many, many years.
That's correct.
If they were interested in selling that, so.
Right.
Okay, great, thank you. We are through city administrator report, gets us to consent agenda. We have 7 items on that. Are there any questions about any of the items or any requests to remove any of the items? Seeing none, then the chair would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we've got a motion by Alderwoman Sims, seconded by Alderwoman O'Neill. Any further discussion? Roll call?
Alderman Plufka?
Yes.
Alderwoman Tice?
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims?
Yes.
Alderman Weggie?
Yes.
Alderman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller?
Yes.
Alderwoman O'Neill? Alderman Shelton?
Yes.
By a vote of 8-0, consent agenda is approved.
Great, thank you. And that brings us into old business, and there's only one item under that, and that is item 9B, bill number 6342. Can we get a second read of bill number 6342 by title only, please, Mr. City Attorney?
Yes, sir. As soon as I can find the.
And I tried to speak real slow there.
And I appreciated that. There it is. Bill number 6342 is second reading and consideration for adoption an ordinance establishing the rate of property tax to be levied for the year 2021 for general municipal purposes, police and fire retirement fund, and public library purposes. Thank you, Mayor.
Great, thank you. Any more discussion on this? Can we get a motion to perfect bill number 6342 in the ordinance form?
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion by Alderwoman Tice, seconded by Alderman Shelton. Any further discussion? Roll call?
Alderman Plufka?
Yes.
Alderwoman Tice?
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims?
Yes.
Alderman Weggie?
Yes.
Alderman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller?
Yes.
Alderwoman O'Neill? Alderman Shelton?
Yes.
By a vote of 8-0, bill passes and will become ordinance number 4978.
Great, thank you. And that brings us into new business. First up is item 10A, resolution number 1316. Can we get a motion to approve resolution 1316?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. This came out of Ways and Means, I think, right? So, Chair, as the Ways and Means, do you care to address this? I mean, this, I think didn't your committee initiate this, or was this initiated by staff?
I think it was both. I mean, I know in discussions, but I certainly, gave a full-throated support of having staff develop a policy that would, embrace a vaccine policy. I think between what the federal government is doing, what the county is doing, what hospitals are doing, what universities are doing, what facts and data have borne out, I think it's incumbent on us to have a policy like this in place. Compelling to me, in addition to having this requirement, there are exemptions baked in that address medical reasons and a sincerely held religious belief. Which and I'm not the lawyer in this. I'm not wearing that hat, but that is someone who was in a position of voting on policy to have those exemptions in place and baked into the policy. I think addresses certainly medical concerns and those that may rest on religious beliefs. In addition, what also came out of our committee was to develop an ongoing negative testing policy for those who do fall into the exemptions that I've described, so that there's a way of keeping track of, if someone does test positive that has not been vaccinated. I think given the fact that our citizens may be compelled to interact with our employees, be it, police or fire or just, the non-uniform, I think we owe it to them to make it as safe as possible. So, you know, I had a full-throated support of this at the committee meeting, and I do now here in front of the board. So I would ask that you vote to approve this resolution.
Okay, thank you. Bola, is either you or Jason able to just to give a summary, a synopsis of the resolution?
Yes, I can address that, Mr. Mayor. Basically, the policy, as it is written, would mandate the vaccine for all employees at full and part-time by December 1st. Those individuals that wish to try to seek a religious or a medical exemption could do so by November 1st. The turnaround time would be approximately 2 weeks, so there would be the opportunity, should that fail, that the employee would still have the opportunity to begin the process to get the vaccine. Should they not choose not to go down that path and still remain unvaccinated, they would then be placed on a 2-week unpaid leave of absence, giving them further opportunity to get that. And at that point, if they refuse to get the vaccine, then employment would be separated from the city.
Okay. All right, thank you. Do we have any questions about, Alderman Weggie?
Yeah, this is probably Jason, just for my notification, make sure I'm understanding. So employees will be giving time off from work. They'll be paid while they go get the vaccination.
Yes, and we've done that thus far as well.
And they would, basically that would be approved. They would also, if they had negative consequences to the vaccine, they would be able to use the sick policy and be granted time off if they had a couple days that they were recovering from the vaccine as well.
Yes, sir.
And then if they are approved for an exemption, they will be, is there a plan in place to test them?
Yes, there is. The fire department has actually agreed to step up, and they would be testing on a weekly basis, and their turnaround is 15 minutes. So they've got the rapid test. So we would know in relative short order. And at this point, it's a small number of individuals that currently are unvaccinated. So the number of individuals that would potentially qualify for that exemption is relatively minimal at this point.
And if somebody tests positive during that weekly test, if they have an exemption, then they would be quarantined?
Yes, and at that point, they would be utilizing their own personal paid time off, just as if they had contracted any other illness.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Any other questions? Alderman O'Neill.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If we're going to ask our employees to do something, I think elected officials should also go along with that. So I know it's not part of this resolution, but I would like to see if this passes something drawn up so that elected officials and volunteers are requested to have the vaccine too.
Is that a motion? Are you making a motion to amend the resolution? I don't know.
Probably should be separate from this.
Okay. All right. I'm looking at our city attorney. I'm getting the big head nod, yes, on that.
Yes, sir. I don't think the elected officials or volunteers are subject to the personnel manual, which this amends.
Okay, so that makes sense. So this would be modifying the personnel manual, which does not apply to us, so it would have to be a separate.
motion.
Right,
Yes, okay.
right. Okay, if I understand the city attorney correctly. And Jason, yes, Alderman Plufka.
Thank you. So I have a question for Jason, kind of to follow up. Of the various departments you have listed in the memorandum, do we require our current employees in the administration department to be vaccinated against any other polio, rubella, measles?
There's nothing that I check at the time of hire for an individual for any kind of other vaccines.
So would that be true for not only the administration, but also streets and sanitation, planning, and parks and rec?
Correct, yes, sir.
But for police and fire, as I understand it, they have additional mandates, correct?
That would be through our medical control, and I don't want to speak out of turn for that. Potentially, Chief Cottrell could address at least what the fire department would require as medical professionals.
Yes, so our personnel, due to the risk of their job, they are vaccinated against hepatitis A, hepatitis B. Those are the two required off the top of my head.
Are they required to be vaccinated against the seasonal flu?
Currently, we are not required. It is offered to all of our people. We're undergoing our physicals right now, but it is not a requirement.
But it's not a condition of employment?
No, it is not.
Okay. Is that true for the police department as well? Do you know? Okay, but not. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thank you. Alderman Lockmuller.
Jason, would you be able to give us what those total numbers are of unvaccinated?
Yes, currently there are none within the administrative department, none within the planning department. And I'm referring to full-time only employees at this point. I don't have definitive numbers on the part-time staff. Parks and Recreation, I have 2 unvaccinated. Public Works, I have 2 unvaccinated. The fire department has reduced, that is only 1 unvaccinated in the police department. At last count was 8 unvaccinated. So that's 13 individuals out of 110. So right now we're at about 88% compliance.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Alderman Gould.
Can you explain what are the protocols for keeping, making sure that those that do get exempt status, there isn't any potential of a toxic work environment or their privacy is respected and all that?
Well, right now, that would remain with me as the human resource manager for the city. So anyone that requests that, right now the vaccine status for any employee is not publicly indicated anywhere unless the employee chooses to self-disclose that. So that would remain in effect going forward as well. I don't...
Except that they'll have to then...
They'd have to notify me and they would have to be tested. So it would fall through myself. They don't necessarily have to get tested here, but we will offer that as an alternative should they wish to not incur any kind of expenses on their own. If they choose to go down that path, obviously I can't stop employees from speaking to one another and disclosing their own status, but any kind of repercussions from that would fall under other policies within the employee manual with regards to hostile work environment or things along those lines.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anyone else?
I got one more.
Yeah, Alderman Lockmuller.
I guess this is for our city attorney. In the policy statement, it says we're to create a safe environment free of infection and transmission of this disease. Can you actually say that? Or does that open us up to liability then by saying that you've got this free and sterile environment?
I don't think that should be read as a guarantee. I think it is that the steps necessary to try to achieve that goal would include the steps in this policy.
All right, thank you.
Anyone else? Alderman Gould.
As a follow-up on that, but that's not how it's written right now. It's written in that it says to create a free, an environment free of. I mean, I agree with Alderman Lockmuller that I just want to make sure that we're avoiding any potential, legal loopholes of somebody losing their job and saying that, there's no way that they could have enforced this resolution to begin with. I just want to make sure.
I'm not troubled that this makes the resolution, makes the policy unenforceable.
Okay.
And the goal is not to have anybody lose their job.
Alderwoman Tice.
I just for the discussion, I'd like to add 2 things. One is that the federal government at some point looks like employers who have 100 or more employees will be required to mandate the vaccine, and we are there. And then Chief Cottrell brought up in his memo and the documents that entities that receive Medicare and Medicaid funding, which the city does through the fire department, also are going to be required to mandate their employees be vaccinated. So I think this is timely, and I think this is the right thing to do to keep our citizens and employees safe.
Alderman Plufka.
Actually, it's kind of funny you say it that way because I heard that and understood that, and I came at it from exactly the opposite standpoint, and that is that because our fire department and our police department perhaps are going to be covered through that federal mandate and through the federal vendor's mandate, that it may be unnecessary for us to do this, to go this additional step. And the people that we are covering, we don't require other vaccinations of as a condition of employment. I'm troubled by that. I mean, I understand. I don't have any concern that the way the ordinance has been written, it's somehow going to be untenable or is going to be unenforceable. I don't have any concern about that. And I'm vaccinated myself, and I absolutely believe in vaccinations. I also believe that now that the FDA has said on a formal basis that these vaccines are safe, not on an emergency basis, but on a formal basis, that I think the risk of somebody taking the vaccine on a medical basis is infinitesimally small. I guess where I'm just troubled by, and I really don't know how I'm voting here. I really don't. I came here tonight not knowing which way I was going to vote. Because I just don't, I don't know if it's the right thing to do for the city to be forcing this on employees when we don't do this in similar areas, all out of the interest in health. I don't know. Thank you. I just want to make that point.
Alderwoman Sims, I haven't heard from you yet.
I think this absolutely is the appropriate measure that we should be taking. I think perhaps one of the reasons we don't require police and fire to get MMR vaccinations is because they had to do that to go to school. And so those viruses aren't as prevalent. This is a global pandemic that we haven't seen in over 100 years, and we're not through the woods yet. And I mean, not to quote a musical, I think history has its eyes upon us. I mean, what could we have done? And to put us in a position of being as safe as we can, this is a very easy decision for me to make. And so I think it's timely, and I think it's the right thing to do.
Alderman Lockmiller.
I'm going to kind of take the opposite stance on it. In principle, I just don't like the idea of a government entity telling somebody what to put into their body that hasn't really been fully tested. These other vaccines have a long track record of being safe, and the threat of losing your job during a pandemic just because you won't put this shot into your body, I just can't get behind. I wish everybody would get vaccinated. I'm vaccinated. But I think there's other things we can do, weekly testing right at the fire station to protect the rest of the employees, put on those type of restrictions. But, taking away somebody's livelihood, I can't get behind. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Waggy.
Yeah, I fully support this from the perspective of this is protecting our residents. Everything we do on this board, in my opinion, is to serve our residents, to protect our residents, and this is all about that. Our town has a lot of interaction with all employees. The trash people are very, very popular. The kids talk to them. Parks and Rec, we deal with them. In the nature where we are, we just crossed over 2,000 deaths a day on average in this country. Where we are, it is our duty to protect our residents, and I completely support this fully FDA-approved vaccine for our employees.
Alderman Shelton.
Yeah, so I support this as well, and I agree with Steve. In principle, I very much am not for, mandating people to do things, and especially, when it comes to health. But as others have said, this is, we're in uncharted waters here, and during the Ways and Means Committee, it really stuck with me when Chief Cottrell got up and said, more so thinking at it when I was going from our personnel, this is, like Alderman Waggy just said, it's about the citizens we serve too, and we owe it to them as well to provide the safest and, do our best to keep everyone safe. And we're never going to get it right. We're going to try our best, and I think this gives us the best chance.
Yes. Alderman O'Neill.
As Alderwoman Tice said, we may be covered by federal laws anyway, so it would have to be done. But I think as a statement from us to our employees that we care enough about you to say we're going on record to do this, it's important that we vote for this.
Anyone else? Okay, roll call.
Alderman Plufka?
Yes.
Alderwoman Tice?
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims?
Yes.
Alderman Weggie?
Yes.
Alderman Gould?
Nope.
Alderman Lockmiller?
No.
Alderwoman O'Neill? Alderman Shelton?
Yes.
By a vote of 6-2, motion carries.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is item Resolution 1317, Flock Security Cameras. It's a resolution authorizing an agreement with Flock Group, Inc. for the installation of license plate readers within the city of Brentwood, Missouri. Chief, are you going to speak to this?
over the course of the last few years, everyone knows that we've, Brentwood, along with all of our communities, been challenged with nighttime crime. So as part of our process of trying to make the city as safe as possible, we've been monitoring ways outside of normal patrol and different details in order to try and affect that crime. We've been waiting for technology to kind of catch up to help us do that, and I think that the flock camera system is really a good step forward. We have watched for about a year that it's been deployed in cities like Wentzville and St. Charles County, St. Charles City, Clayton, Eureka. I've been in contact with each of their chiefs in those areas to determine the value of the system, and they really like it. Some of the values of it are it can immediately notify our officers of a license plate hit on a stolen car. So oftentimes the people at night in particular running around stolen cars doing this type of crime, we would know within 15 seconds or so if a car comes into a particular area. On top of that, we can share this information. So if Clayton has these cameras and they have a car comes through their flock camera system, we will get immediate notification and direction of travel. And obviously we would know what kind of car it is. Oftentimes, obviously, they cross these small borders quickly and affect our neighborhoods just like they would in Maplewood or Richmond Heights, Clayton, wherever it may be. Along with that, this information is searchable. So any car that goes, they're all motion activated cameras. So every car that goes past these cameras is captured. So if the bad guys put temp tags on their car and they don't hit it on the LPR, but we have an incident, we can go back and search that camera system as well. So that makes it a nice investigative tool for our detective bureau. The last piece of this that we thought was a neat thing to have is that there's learning inside their software where this system can determine a car by its taillights. As your car, any car goes through the system, it can tell you specifically what make that car is. Our detectives then can find it, determine what color car it is, what the plate was on it. It gives us additional investigative leads as well. Cost of the system is relatively inexpensive. They are a subscription-based program, meaning that there's a very little cost. It's $250 for the initial cost to deploy the camera. That's per camera. We have plotted out 7 locations in the city of Brentwood, so we require 7 cameras. The cost yearly is $2,500 per camera. So it's a little under, right around $18,500 for 7 cameras. If the board chooses to deploy 7, obviously that number was just where we got to when we looked at the mapping, where it would be best strategically placed for our officers. Anybody have any questions on the system?
Yeah, Alderman Shelton.
I have a quick question. So is there an option, and maybe this is something that we don't need, but I guess in my mind, if, let's say that someone doesn't have stolen tags or the car is not reported stolen, is there a way for us, for instance, if a car drives into Brentwood Forest at 3 in the morning, that we can turn on like motion activation and it alerts the on-duty officers that, hey, there's a car coming through. Hopefully it's someone coming home from, work at the hospital or something like that, or is that a capability or?
Yes, it does have motion activation. It probably wouldn't be applicable in Brentwood Forest because there's so many cars and people that live there. York Village is a good example of that. If they hit York Village, it's 3, 4 o'clock in the morning often. So yes, you can turn on motion activation, and what that means is it'll go directly to whatever cell phones that we choose flock to go to. So our on-duty supervisors, if it's 4 in the morning, they would get an alert of a car that went into a particular neighborhood that we had it turned on for.
And it wouldn't have to be a stolen car?
Doesn't have to be stolen. It
Great.
just alerts.
Great.
Plus you get a picture of the car that goes in. Oftentimes our officers know the paper man or, whoever that frequents those neighborhoods at night. So if it's a car they don't recognize, they can go check it.
Thank you.
And Alderman Lockmuir, this came from Public Safety with a unanimous recommendation?
Yes, it did. We've got, and Chief, correct me if I'm wrong, we've got something like this on a trailer, which obviously stands out like a sore thumb. These are very concealable, and plus they can be moved around from different locations from time to time, correct?
Yes, they are mobile to some, and we have to have the company come out and relocate them, but they are able to be moved to a different location if we choose to do that.
Yeah. No, it came out unanimous vote for.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, Alderman Gould.
Yeah, thank you. I have a question, one about, is there an echo there? One about the privacy of individuals. Does, after the database captures it, if it isn't part of a stolen vehicle or anything like that, is that kept for anything? I think it's.
Kept for 30 days.
So everybody,
All of the
every
video is
vehicle
kept.
that goes through is
Yeah.
kept for 30 days, and then if it doesn't match a database, it's purged.
Correct, unless law enforcement asks for a particular excerpt of that tape, everything's expunged after 30 days.
Okay. And then, question about the 7 locations that I noticed they're all, strategically placed off of the highway, essentially. Do we not have any issue with vehicles coming in from the south?
Occasionally we do. Primarily, our biggest challenges are off of Highway 64 and Highway 170. So as you look at the map that we created, they are all on the north end of town. You also notice that one of them's in Ladue.
Yeah.
Which, again, we have to obviously get approval. I don't think they're going to approve it. So our intention is to move that second camera there on McKnight and 64, likely down on Manchester.
Okay, yeah.
Probably right at the eastern border of Manchester.
Hanley and Manchester Road.
Right.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was wondering. Obviously, Brentwood is not going to be an escape route, but Manchester Road would be nice.
We had Tom Bottini do the numbers on it. We were well over 85% of our nighttime crimes occurring in the northern end of our city.
Okay.
So the numbers support that deployment. Doesn't mean we don't have them on Manchester occasionally.
Alderwoman Tice.
I think this is a great thing for the police department to do. Are the cameras ever targeted, or do people shoot at the cameras? Are they visible, and do people tamper with them?
So these cameras really are built to be surreptitious. So they're placed on utility poles. You can have, Flock has their own little pole you can put it on. Most of the time, I have not heard of anyone doing anything to them. Down in the city of St. Louis, they often put these cameras with a red and blue light attachment. Sometimes those are targeted because of that. These cameras, I haven't heard that.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
By the way, if they are, the Flock people come out and replace it. We don't pay for it.
Oh, good, okay, great.
Alderman Waggy.
Yeah, thanks for answering the 30-day data. What about, is there a control on who can access that data, especially in the past?
Yes, there is. As we go to contract, only law enforcement can access their data. So it's, you have to have a contract with them that agrees that you're not going to, share it with others. So it's for law enforcement specific reasons. So, and honestly, it's really no different than, this is really no different than any traffic camera that we have all over our neighborhoods, all over St. Louis. There are traffic lights on it, cameras on just about every major traffic intersection, which you're being filmed as you go through every day, all day long.
So will
This is no different.
all members of the police department be able to search that database, or is it just the investigators that would be able to go back in time and go back that 30 days?
So there'll be
and look for things?
licenses from Flock. And typically, what I think the way this is probably going to work is that we will license them to the supervisor's cell phones, city phones. But the officers will be able to access the video in their MDTs and their in-car computers. So there'll be an app inside the police car computer where they can pull up the Flock cameras and actually watch them on their computers in their cars.
Would that be real time, or is that going back into the
There's
database
a lag
as
of
well?
about 15 seconds or so to get the video to download and send. It's all cloud-based. There's no hardware on this system, which is really nice. But there's a lag of about 15 seconds.
Okay, but would anybody be able to go back that 30 days in their car, or?
Yes, all of the data is stored for 30 days in the cloud. So if we have an incident where, say it's a robbery, and a robbery occurs and we think that car may have been in the area prior, because often they do, our detectives can come back in and go through 3 days of video and just keep looking. And if they know what kind of car it is, or they have a suspect vehicle, they can actually plug in the back taillights of that car. So if it's a 1995 Altima, they can plug those taillights into the Flock camera system, and any 95 Altima that went through at any point, it'll pop to them and they can look at it. So that's one of the investigative tools of it.
But anybody in the police department would be able to do that analysis as well at any time? Do you have any concerns with that, or just limiting that just to detectives and investigators that are?
Yeah, it's specific to computers and to the laptops in the cars. So, but yes, the officers will have the licensing to be able to look at the video. And I don't have any concerns with them being able to do that.
Okay.
Most of the time, I would tell you that the road officers won't really have much need for to review the video. This will probably be the actions of the detectives.
Okay.
Anyone else? Can we get a motion to approve Resolution 1317?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion by Alderman Lockmiller, seconded by Alderman Plufka. Any further discussion on Resolution 1317? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Alderman Plufka?
Yes.
Alderwoman Tice?
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims?
Yes.
Alderman Weggie?
Yes.
Alderman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller?
Yes.
Alderwoman O'Neill? Alderman Shelton?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries by a vote of 8-0.
Great, thank you. That brings us to Bill number 6345. This is going to be the beginning of our Public Works initiated bills. So with that, can we get a first read of Bill 6345 by ordinance only, please? By title only, please.
Bill number 6345, first reading, an ordinance vacating a certain 15-foot wide alley right-of-way owned by the city between Park Ridge Avenue and St. Clair Avenue, which is no longer necessary for the purposes for which it was dedicated.
Great, thank you. Actually, I may have misspoke. I think it's Parks and Recreation Department.
Yeah, so last year, the city did a contracted TWM to conduct property and research boundary services. And we found a number of things, and one of them was a 15-foot alley from Park Ridge Avenue to St. Clair. And honestly, it's not being used an alley. The city's not using it at all, so it was a recommendation from the Public Works Committee that the city moves forward with all the paperwork necessary for vacation, and that's what we're asking to do today.
Motion to perfect Bill number 6345 in the ordinance form.
Second.
Well, hold on a second. We've got to have a second read on it first. Can we get a motion for a second read?
That's what I meant.
And that's what I seconded.
So we got a motion by Alderman Weggie for a second read of Bill 6345 and seconded by Alderwoman Tice. Any discussion on that? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Mr. City Attorney, can we get a second read of Bill 6345 by title only, please?
Bill number 6345, second reading and consideration for adoption. An ordinance vacating a certain 15-foot wide alley right-of-way owned by the city between Park Ridge Avenue and St. Clair Avenue, which is no longer necessary for the purposes for which it was dedicated.
Now, Alderman Weggie, do you care to make a motion?
Yeah, motion to perfect Bill number 6345 in the ordinance format.
Second.
All right. Any further discussion? Alderman Plufka.
Well, I meant this as a question, but I missed my 3-second opportunity there to get a question in. And it's just a simple, so as I understand, looking at the maps, it appears to me that in vacating the land, our control over it, our ownership of it, we're simply drawing a line down the middle of it and ceding the properties to each side.
That is correct. I
Okay.
apologize. I should mention that. Yes.
Thank you.
7.5 feet to each adjoining property.
Got it. Thank you very much.
Alderman Weggie.
Just to add something, I mean, so even though we recommended out of Public Works to vacate this section between Park Ridge and St. Clair, we did not vote to vacate the next section, which basically runs dead end into the Mount Calvary, just because who knows what's going to happen in the future there. So we're not vacating the entire section, it's just that one section. That gets us out of the requirement of asphalting somebody's driveway, basically.
All right. Anybody else? Any further questions? Okay, since we have a motion to perfect, can we get a roll call, please?
Alderman Plufka?
Yes.
Alderwoman Tice?
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims?
Yes.
Alderman Weggie?
Yes.
Alderman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller?
Yes.
Alderwoman O'Neill? Alderman Shelton?
Yes.
By a vote of 8-0, the bill passes and will become ordinance 4979.
Great, thank you. Brings us up to Bill number 6346. Can we get a first reading by title only, please, Mr. City Attorney?
Bill number 6346, first reading, ordinance vacating a certain 5-foot wide walkway right-of-way owned by the city between Bremerton Road and Hilldale Avenue, which is no longer necessary for the purposes for which it was dedicated.
Thank you. Eric?
Very similar, except for we found a walkway from Bremerton to Hilldale. We're asking to do the same thing. It'd be 2.5 feet for each adjoining property. The only caveat to this one is the two properties on Hilldale, that parcel we found was actually owned by the city, so we can't do it by vacation. So we are trying to do additional research of how the city purchased that little parcel strip of land. And once we figure that out and figure out the right thing to do, we'll be bringing that section back to the board.
Any questions? And like the other one, we would like to have a second reading on that tonight, so can we get a motion for second read?
So moved. Second.
Okay, any further discussion on that motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Can we get a second read by title only for Bill 6346, please?
Bill number 6346, second reading and consideration for adoption an ordinance vacating a certain 5-foot wide walkway right-of-way owned by the city between Bremerton Road and Hilldale Avenue, which is no longer necessary for the purposes for which it was dedicated.
Thank you. Motion to perfect?
So moved. Second.
Motion by Alderman Weggie, second by Alderman Gould. Any further discussion? Roll call?
Alderman Plufka?
Yes.
Alderwoman Tice?
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims?
Yes.
Alderman Weggie?
Yes.
Alderman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller?
Yes.
Alderwoman O'Neill? Alderman Shelton?
Yes.
By a vote of 8-0, the bill passes and will become ordinance 4980.
Thank you. That brings us down to Bill number 6347. Can we get a first reading by title only, please?
Bill number 6347, first reading, an ordinance approving utility easements with Metropolitan St. Louis Sewer District for sewer facilities for the Brentwood's Bound Improvements Project.
Now, this one is Dan, is that right?
Yeah, and this one's pretty straightforward, just like we've done for the past probably 2-3 meetings. This particular easement is for an encroachment, and it is for a sewer. It's MSD. It's over at the former Frederick Roofing, so it's 8,000 Manchester Road. And it's at no cost to the city. The consultants on the design team have looked at it. Everything's fine with it. It's just a matter of approving it and giving it to MSD.
Okay, any questions? I don't see that we're asking for a second read on this, right?
If the board would consider a second reading.
Okay. If the board would consider a second read on this, we would simply need a motion.
So moved. Second.
Okay, we've got a motion by Alderman Lockmiller. I heard a second by Alderwoman O'Neill. Any discussion on a second read? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, Mr. City Attorney, can we get a second read of Bill 6347 by title only, please?
Bill number 6347, second reading and consideration for adoption an ordinance approving utility easements with Metropolitan St. Louis Sewer District for sewer facilities for the Brentwood Bound Improvements Project.
A motion to perfect into ordinance form?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion by Alderman Tice to perfect Bill number 6347 in ordinance form, seconded by Alderman Weggie. Any further discussion? Roll call?
Alderman Plufka?
Yes.
Alderwoman Tice?
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims?
Yes.
Alderman Weggie?
Yes.
Alderman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller?
Yes.
Alderwoman O'Neill? Alderman Shelton?
Yes.
By a vote of 8-0, motion carries, and it's will be perfected ordinance number 4981.
Great, thank you. Okay, moving along, we're down to item F, discussion to establish pay classification for emergency medical technicians and paramedics. Who is handling this, Bola? Jason, are you going to speak to this?
Yeah.
What had come up during some of the earlier Ways and Means Committee discussions, in fact, the very first one was to classify the emergency medical technicians as paramedics for the purposes of the compensation survey. At the time, there were 5 EMTs. Now we're down to 4. All of those are relatively late in their career, and for all intents and purposes, they perform probably 99% of the same functions. So it had passed at the committee level. When it was brought to the board, there had been a little bit of discussion, and it had been tabled and moved forward to this point. One thing I would want to point out is that if the board chooses to keep the EMTs as their own classification based on the most current compensation survey all of those individuals, those 4, are currently capped and above where they would be. So the numbers will be slightly skewed based on the information that I had provided prior, because that was considering them as paramedics, so therefore they would then receive a rate increase. If the board chooses to keep them on a separate pay grid, the overall cost would be reduced because they would not be receiving rate increases.
Okay, great, thank you. Would this simply be in the form of a motion? Okay, motion to either way. Okay. So can we get a motion one way or the other so staff can get some direction on what to do? Because I guess at this point in time, is it going to, are they going to be, no, we'd have to have a motion to consider them the same. Okay, so I guess with that, can we get a motion to, I guess, consider emergency medical technicians as the same level as paramedics? Don't have a motion, okay? So I guess we don't have, so the way I take that, there's no motion to do that.
Right, stays as is.
Okay, so it stays as is. The EMTs will be a different classification than the paramedics. Okay, thank you, everybody. That gets us down to item G. We've lost our city attorney for the first read.
Oh.
So I guess we can do a first read of Bill 6333 by title only, please. Bola.
An ordinance establishing a pay classification system for all full-time City of Brentwood employee positions and establishing an accompanying pay classification system for fiscal year 2021 and related matters, which are contingent upon the annual budget appropriation and providing for the effective day of this ordinance.
Okay, thank you. And just, I had some questions posed to me over the last few months about this. I know this has been just languishing in a sense, and there are a lot of reasons for that, some out of my control, some not out of my control. And we are here today partly because of something that Ways and Means did. They took up this issue, and the recommendation from Ways and Means, I think, is Bill number 6334 and 6335. Is that fair to say? I think, sound right. And that was to change the pay. So right now, the pay classification is 75% for both uniform and non-uniformed. And that would be under Bill 6335. Bill 6334 was, I guess, the recommendation from Ways and Means. I don't know if it even was a recommendation so much.
We've kind of passed, we vetted
Okay.
it and we did the analysis and then.
So Bill 6334 would be to change the pay classification for both uniform and non-uniform from the 75th to the 85th percentile. And then Bill number 6333 is something that I'm bringing to the board, and that is to change the pay classification for just the uniform from the current 75th percentile to the 95th percentile. And this was something that I tried to do back in 2018. And when I made the motion, it was seconded by Alderman Plufka. We had a vote at the board level to do just that, and it was a 4-4 vote, thereby requiring the mayor, the then mayor, to break the tie, and the mayor at that time voted no to do that. This is something that I have been wanting to do for quite some time, obviously. My ask of the board tonight is to go ahead and let's move forward with this tonight. I think we had all the questions. I know we had a lot of questions that were asked and answered at the Ways and Means Committee. It was asked at the workshop that we had over at the Recreation Center. And I'm not suggesting that there aren't any more questions, but if there are, ask away. But my ask tonight is to go ahead and let's take up Bill 6333 tonight, which would need a motion from this board for a second read. And if that passes, then I would ask for a motion to perfect Bill 6333 in the ordinance form. So that's my ask of you folks tonight. So with that, first of all, do we have any questions about 6333? Alderman Lockmiller.
Well, I guess I'll ask of you, Your Honor, what issue, what problem is needed to be solved by going to the 95th in uniform?
Well, I don't know if there is a problem per se right now. You know, like I said during the mayor's report, this policing is a very, very difficult thing right now. And if anybody disagrees with that, then quite frankly, you're not paying attention. Not you, but anybody who disagrees with that has not been paying attention. I've been in this position as the mayor since 2019. I've had the opportunity to talk to a lot of mayors, and what I'm hearing from them is the same thing, and that is they're fearful that they're going to have a point where they're not going to get police officers. During the mayor's report, I told you about the real problems that the city of St. Louis is experiencing, the real problems that the county is experiencing. I don't want, and my argument was 2018 is the same as it is today. I don't want us to find ourselves in that position. With each day that goes by, with each year that goes by, it is going to be harder for us to retain police officers. It's going to be harder for us to hire police officers because there are fewer people going into the business. And the people that are there now, I'm thankful that we have them. I'm thankful that they're willing to continue to put their lives on the line for us, for the residents of the city, for the visitors of the city. But at the end of the day, they're going to say, you know, why am I sticking around any longer? And we need all of them. We need the new hires, but we need the seasoned veterans as well. And my argument's the same as I made over at the workshop, quite frankly. It hasn't changed. It's not necessarily this is in response to a problem, but I look at it as though I'm trying to prevent a problem. There's no guarantee that if this board passes this, that we aren't going to lose police officers. We might very well still lose police officers. But I think something that we had to keep in mind is, you know, this is a representative form of government. And when Prop P was passed in 2016 or 2017, the campaign, and the city didn't put a campaign out. It was done by St. Louis County. And the campaign was, we need to pass Prop P to help the police officers for St. Louis County. And I can't tell you what was in the hearts and minds of the voters when they went to the polling places that day, but the logical conclusion to draw from that, when it passed overwhelmingly, is that the voters of the county and in the municipalities wanted that to happen. And we were lucky that we're one of those municipalities that gets money, and we get $450,000 to $460,000 every single year. And in my mind, that's to be used for public safety. And we have used a portion of that to create some positions in our police department. And even then, we still have a lot of that Prop P money left over year after year after year. And if there's any question what role public safety plays in the life of a municipality, I lived in North County for a number of years. And there are two things that have killed North County: the schools going down and public safety. So our school district is terrific, and we have no control of our school district, but we do have direct control over public safety. And given our location to the problem areas, I think we absolutely owe it to the residents of this city to pay our police officers as much as we responsibly can do. And I think it's consistent with what their goals are when they passed Prop P. So, long-winded answer to your question. I'm not sure there is a problem, but I think doing this is consistent with what the voters want us to do. And I think it's the best step that we can take to ensure that we're going to promote and protect the citizens and the visitors to the city.
Well, don't you think along those lines, if there is your typical supply and demand, if there are not as many officers out there as you're saying there may be, won't pay increases rise? And when we're back here in a year in front of Ms. Higbee, won't we be looking at numbers where other municipalities are raising their pay for officers, and we will have to follow along suit?
Yeah, we will.
So it will end up raising, we can still stay at the 75%, but we will have to meet the market at the 75%, and we'll probably have to raise from what we're at right now to attract those officers.
Sure. Yeah, I agree with you. Stay at the 75th percentile. Given the market conditions, I would fully expect at some point, basic laws of supply and demand mean if there's just not enough supply and there's a high enough demand, you're going to have to pay more to get more people to do this. We're not there. It's simple. The numbers, if you look at the number of police officers that are in the academies, that are coming out of the academies, they're down, both in the city and with the county. And so, yeah, if we raise it to the 95th, we might have to raise it again. But the cost to do this, if you look at the numbers, really it's not that much money. We could more than afford this out of simply Prop P money. We're not going to have to pull from any area in the city. It doesn't mean less money for parks and recreation. It doesn't mean less money for public works. They're going to be able to have the same budget that they've had year in, year out, but this is a need. In my mind, this is a need. We have to address this. And if we don't, I think we're flirting with disaster.
Here's my concern with Prop P is as Brentwood Bound comes online, make sure I'm on, I think we are going to need to hire 2 more officers. And we'll probably need a vehicle for those 2 officers because that area down there is a very minimally patrolled at this time. But when we start adding park and the redevelopment down there, I could see us needing 2 more officers just in that area, as well as all the equipment that goes with it. We're looking at $200,000 to $225,000 to be spent there. If we've already done this roughly $86,000 increase, compounded, by the time we get to that point, I don't know if there'll be Prop P money left to hire those officers. So I would rather stay conservative now and have those funds available for when we need to hire additional staff, additional officers.
Alderman Plufka's had his hand up for a long time. I'm sorry.
Thank you. So the concern I've got with Alderman Lockmueller's logic is that we have seen over the last 6 years that the 75th percentile as a formula does not do what our philosophy asked it to do. And that's clear by the math. If you go back to the first years of the utilization of the 75th percentile, it's the use of 75th percentile and standard deviation combined puts us not at when we were first told, when I was first told that we were going to be in the 75th percentile, I thought, well, if we're comparing ourselves to 14 cities, we're going to be the 11th most competitive city within that group every single time. Go back and look. Every single time we are not. We are the 8th best city, the 7th best city. And in some cases with the fire department, we're the 4th best city and the 5th best city out of those 14 because we don't even compare ourselves to 14. If you look at the way Ms. Higbee has us to put the formula together, she eliminates from consideration half of the comparator cities because they're parts of not municipal districts, but regional districts, and says that they don't compare to us and we don't compare to them, and therefore we throw them out. So they're not even concerned about the fact that every single one of those regional districts pays more on a higher scale than we do. We're supposed to just ignore that in our quote-unquote 75th percentile. The problem is, I want a formula that matches our philosophy. And when we make the use of standard deviation, which basically what it does is you calculate the mean of the 14 comparator cities, and then you calculate each city's position to that mean, high or low. You square that number, and then you take the square root of the sum of those numbers, and that gives you your standard deviation. Every community outside that standard deviation is ignored for purposes of applying 75th, 85th, 95th percentile. In short, what this means is that the use of standard deviation means we will never, ever, ever lead the market, not ever. We will never be the highest paying community of our 14 comparator cities. It is impossible as a mathematical formula, it is impossible for us to do that. This is not some ask that is going to lead to some sort of unsustainable or renegade paying behavior. What it's going to do, in my opinion, is it's going to get us closer to our original philosophy, and that was that we wanted to pay our officers and pay our firefighters enough that we are, within 2 or 3 of the top of the most competitive salary schemes in St. Louis County. And right now, we're not. And if you look at every year that Higbee has come back to provide us analysis and alteration to the plan, we're playing catch-up. Look at the changes. The addition to our salaries in the years she doesn't do the analysis, it's X amount of dollars. In the years where she comes back every 2 years and says we now have to apply a new analysis, it's X plus, because we're playing catch-up every single time. Every single time we find ourselves not quite in the upper half, and then we put ourselves in the upper half for about 6 months, and then we aren't in the upper half for the next 2 years, and then we put ourselves back up sort of in the upper half. Moving to the 95th percentile and employing the standard deviation formula will get us to the philosophy of keeping us competitive at that upper level. And I'll tell you something, to the mayor's point, we have both a police force and a fire department that has a ton of experience on it. And what that means, that's great for us. We have some of the best trained and some of the best police officers and firefighters in St. Louis County. The problem is those folks are going to be retiring. About a third of the department is going to be gone by simple attrition in the next 5 or 6 years. We are going to be buyers at the window looking for new hires. And if we don't have a plan like this 95th percentile in place at that time, we are going to be at an extreme, in my opinion, disadvantage. Are we not going to be able to fill spots? No, but are we going to be able to fill spots with the same caliber officers we have now? I don't think so. I really don't. Thank you.
Okay. Alderman O'Neill?
I have a couple problems with this. First of all, I'm always for the underdog, and I can't see promoting a certain segment of our employees over others. I think if we move up any segment, we should move everyone up. The second is, we've been talking about police tonight. With the Higbee report, our firefighters are already pretty well compensated. And the fact that on that basis, the police department is paid less because of the marketing is the reason they are paid less. We're talking about moving money. You haven't mentioned fire departments. You've been talking strictly police departments. I would like to see us ditch the Higbee report in this case and move the police department into the same scale as the firefighters. So all our uniformed personnel are paid on the same basis. That would raise the pay scale for the police department to a higher level and might take care of the difference in between the two. Whether that means we don't ever have faith in Higbee, I see the value of that, but I also see Alderman Plufke's mathematical problems. But I do not like this with 95% uniform. It also moves the firefighters higher, which means the discrepancy between the firefighters and the police department is greater. I don't think that's fair.
Alderman Gould.
Yeah, I would agree with Alderwoman O'Neill in that I think we're creating more problems than we're solving again for a situation for, we don't have a retention issue right now. We don't have a acquisition or recruitment problem right now in uniform. We're going to be doing this study in another year by this time here, and we can evaluate it again. So if the concern is what we might be 4 or 5 years from now, there's opportunity to be evaluating it at that point. I think we do have an issue with our non-uniform employees and being competitive and filling positions. And I think creating a different standard for their percentage of compensation only drives a wedge between uniform and non-uniform to make it even more difficult for us to attract, where we actually do have a problem right now.
Alderwoman Sims.
I am in support of the ordinance or the bill that we've been discussing. when we were vetting this out through Ways and Means, I was for the 95% percentile. I think it's transparent. It is compelling to me in terms of separating out uniform and non-uniform of the matter of the Prop P money. I take that we have a mandate from the people who voted on that law to allocate funds to police and fire. I think they face different factors in hiring. It's not the same as hiring, a non-uniform employee who may fit well in the private sector. I'm not the HR person here, but I think that those positions have more of a market to fill. They're easier to fill in the private sector and other places, versus police and fire. I think in times when we are going to have to be hiring police and fire, to say that our philosophy is to hire at the 95th percentile, because that's the kind of personnel we want. I think that sends a message. I think that would be effective in marketing, and it's consistent with how we otherwise are. We want the best parks, we want the best streets, we want the best lights, and the idea that except for police and fire, we want to stay in the 75% range. That's not a philosophy I agree with. I think that we should pull them up to the 95th percentile. I think that's. Oh, and finally, this is all subject to budget approval every year. This is a philosophy. If we don't have the money, we're not going to spend the money. We still have other checks against approving payroll for these employees. So I think as a philosophy, having the 95th percentile for police and fire and keeping the non-uniform at 75, I think that's what I support, and I think it's transparent and consistent with how we approach other matters in the city.
Okay. Like I said, when I started this, Alderman Morgan, do you have something?
Yeah, can I ask one question, just one clarification? We're not changing the approach on the standard deviation where we're taking the comparators and we're still lopping off anything that's a standard. So that methodology is the same for bill number 6333. It's just that we're moving it to the 95th percentile. Okay.
Find the end number by 95 instead of 75.
Right. We're still keeping the same standard deviation.
That's right.
Making sure I understand that.
Yeah, that's still written in the proposed bill is the standard deviation
Right.
language.
Okay. Just want to make sure I understood that. Statistics is hard. But I'm in support of going to the 95th percentile for uniform. I completely agree about the difference, but it's the Prop P that matters to me. Right. I think the residents voted for that, and it was a poorly worded proposition, honestly. But I think there was an expectation of the voters that was going to salaries, and that's why I believe that going to the 95th percentile is what the voters wanted us to do. So I'm in favor of 6333.
Okay. I'm sorry, Alderman Tice.
I'll just add my comment. I have thought long and hard about this for at least 6 months since the Ways and Means Committee spent, I don't even know how many hours discussing this. I have come around to the 95th percentile, and I think because of what Alderman Wegge just said, because of Prop P, that is the only reason I think that there should be, it's logical that there's a discrepancy, but I think there was a statement made with that. So, thank you.
Alderman Shelton.
Sorry, I'll just throw my rationale in there. So I too will be in support of this, and for the mention of the Proposition P, I agree with Alderman O'Neill. I wish we could do this for everyone. And going back to the Proposition P, I think it was from the voters that said, this is what we're choosing at this time. I also agree with Alderman Plufka at the point when you look at the standard deviation, you're losing all the outliers, so to speak, which I know is the intent of it. So by doing the 95th percentile, it does get us closer to that philosophy, which I was not a part of that discussion, but understanding that is our philosophy that was adopted, I think that this ultimately gets us closer to that. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman O'Neill.
If we vote for this, it means all the uniform personnel go to 95, which means the firefighters will probably go up, but there will still be a discrepancy between the police and the fire pay, is that correct?
I'm going to turn to Jason on that. He knows these classifications much better than we do.
That's correct. The classifications were set by the Higbee report, which was, I believe, also included in the document that you have. So it does show those various pay grids, but there is a difference based market, as you had indicated before, between police and fire.
All right. Can I ask to amend the motion then that the police figures, the police steps, be amended to go to the same as the fire department?
You can make that motion. So your motion would be to change the classifications for the police officers so that they are in line with the fire department.
Yes.
Is that, Mr. City Attorney, does that make sense?
I think she needs to be more specific.
Okay.
You know, which positions, it's not just everybody, right? Because in the report, it identifies certain police positions that aren't on par with fire. So the general statement, what does it mean?
For those equivalent positions, the pay scale would be the same for police and fire. Can that be worked out?
So you mean corporals and sergeants?
In the baseline fire.
I don't do the military things. I'm sorry, but
We just want to make sure that the entire board understands what your motion is.
so that every police officer is equivalent to every firefighter.
If I may, I don't believe, unless I'm mistaken, if this bill is not to be read for a second time tonight, then perhaps your motion would be to instruct staff to prepare an amendment for consideration at the next meeting, which will establish parity between the pay plan for firefighters and police officers, or for the police department and the fire department.
That's much more succinct. Thank you, yes. So may I
Okay,
offer
well, we've
that?
got a motion on the table. Do we have a second for that motion? I don't see any. Okay.
Okay.
So Alderman Gould.
Yeah, I have a question about Prop P. So Bola, can you or whoever clarify for us how much Prop P money is left? And right now it's being used for a lot of equipment and other measures, including some compensation for positions. I think if I recall, it was about 40,000 that was unaccounted for still.
That's right, approximately 45,000.
So we only have, out of what we have already allocated year over year for Prop P, around 40,000 was left.
Right.
And some of that goes to the fire department, some of it goes to, fairly equally goes to police department as well, although majority police.
That's correct.
Okay. If we now take all of that is already funded through Prop P and remove it from Prop P to pay for salaries, how are we paying for all of the other necessary things? And if capital improvements were for fire department, do they not get any salary increases through Prop P money because all of it will go to police?
So interestingly enough, the mayor and I had this discussion earlier on today. Presently, both police and fire have access to Prop P. A majority of those funds are used by police, so there are 2 positions full-time that are funded from that, and then 2 consultants are also funded for that. But then the balance of the IT request for both police and fire comes from that fund as well. So I think it's important for the board perhaps to discuss and have a motion that tells staff that going forward, fire would now have to go to Capital Improvement Fund for their IT request, and all those funds remaining in Prop P would only be for the police department.
Well, for salary.
Well, for salaries.
Right.
Right, so, now, and I get, Mr. Mayor, your assessment that it's probably not going to affect us necessarily if we had to put the burden on general fund for any of those necessary things that the fire department has, but it is an implication that I think we all need to just make sure that we're comfortable with, that all of the Prop P money will then be salary for police officers, and we have to then fund through other methods, which in the budget process could mean maybe we need a little less in one department or another to make sure that we, have the public safety capital improvements to support our fire department. I just want to make sure that that's clear and everybody, is comfortable with that.
Well, yes. The only clarification is that the Prop P money is not just to fund the salaries to get us to the 95th for the police officer. It'd be for all uniformed. You mentioned just the police department. And I was saying that would not be my intention. My intention would be that the Prop P money would be a source to use year after year to help fund this raise to the 95th percentile.
But yet we only have 40,000 left in that so we would have to change that.
In this year, but next year it would be different because we would take those capital items out of Prop P and fund those from the capital budget and use to the extent that we need. And once we do that, we'd have
to do that, like you said.
Okay, all right.
Alderman Lockmuller.
Wouldn't want to challenge Alderman Plewka's statistical prowess, but
Have at it.
I want you to. So.
But under your scenario, is that to say then, since you and I have been on the board, that the hires we made since then at the 75% with the problem you're stating in deviation have been subpar?
No, I don't think that the hires have been subpar, but I think that our competitiveness as it pertains to comparing us to the 14 comparator cities has never been at the philosophy that I voted for. It's been below that consistently. That's all I'm saying. And that as we get into a time post-Ferguson, post other events that have made it harder and harder to find qualified police officers who want to get into the training and then do this job, just as an example, that pool is undeniably shrinking, both in St. Louis and in St. Louis County and across the country. And I believe that because of the maturity of our workforce, we've not made, we have, I think it's 26 firefighters and 29 police officers at this point, or 21, I'm sorry. But there is a percentage of them, and I would say it's approaching 25%, that are within 5 years of retirement. And I think the police force is the same way. So whereas we have not been consistently hiring multiple numbers of officers, I know we did just recently install 3, but we are going to be in a situation over the next several years where we are going to be hiring multiple police officers, multiple firefighters to fill vacancies, and what the 95th percentile does. And if you look at the other part of this that we're not really talking about is the 7 steps as opposed to 12 steps. We already treat our uniformed officers differently when it comes to salaries than we do our non-uniformed employees. They have a 12-step process. The firefighters and the police officers have a 7-step process. And the talk about this being, the talk about it being untenable is people talking about the firefighters and police officers that are at the upper end of the scale. The 7 steps retards that, the 7th step. Once you get to the 7th step, you're not talking about incremental increases anymore. You're talking about increases that are brought about by the market, by changes in the market going forward. So other than this 1 year of adjustment, we're not going to experience, continuing giant exponential, whatever adjective you want to use, changes to maintain ourselves at 95th percentile. But what it will do is it will raise the bar for those lower levels. That step 1, that step 2, and that step 3. Those are the places where we find ourselves to be the least competitive, I think. And if you look at the statistics, we are the least competitive in those lower numbers. And this will, I'm not a big fan of the use of standard deviation, but I don't have any problem with it staying in there. But if it does stay in there, it's got to be, in my opinion, it's got to be combined with this 95th percentile factoring, because that's the only way in which you keep us at the higher percentages of experience of comparing ourselves to the various communities. And it has a bigger impact on the lower scale than it does on the higher scale.
But
Yeah, go ahead.
well, I guess I'm not seeing the cause and effect. I guess I'm seeing these hires we just had, or the guys we just had here tonight. I believe there was like 15 applicants, am I correct, Bola, or Jason, that applied for that position?
For the fire department, we had 16. The police department, the numbers were greatly reduced. I want to say there was about 11 that came through.
So we're still attracting applicants. I know that what you're saying about supply dropping off, but then, of course, we're going to have to raise supply, demand, and the price goes up if you don't have supply meeting your demand. So I think we'll be revisiting those numbers again later. And then, what was the other thing? Oh, retention. You know, we go to 95%. I believe we're in the same predicament in a year from now. Am I correct, Jason, of people being capped out?
Yes, sir.
Even at the 95.
There will be quite a few, yes, sir.
Well, what do you do? Well, if you're saying they're leaving in 3 to 4 years, yeah, they will.
They're
retired.
They're not leaving because of our philosophy of salary. They're leaving because their pensions vest.
Right.
I mean, our pension program is what keeps our officers here. It isn't our pay philosophy. It isn't the fact that some of our detectives haven't seen raises in the better part of a decade. That's not what keeps them here. What keeps them here, financially at least, is our pension plan. And as soon as it vests, I guarantee you they're going to be gone and looking for a second career somewhere else. Thank you very much, City of Brentwood. I'm going to go on and do something else. And we're going to be looking to replace that hole.
And I think that'll happen whether we're at the 75% or the 95%.
It
It's just a
will, but
matter
we'll
of
be
time.
right. But we'll be better prepared at that time to replace them with the same caliber quality officers that have been leaving if we're at 95 as opposed to 75.
Okay.
Move on.
Can we?
Can I
Yeah.
ask, does Jason have any comments, anything from what we've said tonight that
We're going to put you on the
would-
spot, Jason. Yeah.
Not, unless you have a specific question, I really don't feel it's my place to make an editorial comment.
Okay.
Like I said, I'd like to address this tonight. I think we've been dealing with this for a very long time, but in order to move forward on this, I would need a motion for a second read of
I make a
this.
motion for a second reading.
So moved.
Okay, so moved, thank you. And we have, so any further discussion on having a second read? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
No,
Any opposed?
Yes.
No.
Opposed.
Okay, roll call, please.
sorry.
Alderman Plufka,
Yes.
Alderwoman Tice,
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims,
Yes.
Alderman Weggie,
Yes.
Alderman Gould,
No.
Alderman Lockmiller,
No.
Alderwoman O'Neill,
No.
Alderman Shelton.
Yes.
By a vote of 5-3, the motion carries for a second read.
Thank you. Mr. City Attorney, do we need to procedurally, can we go forward at this point, get a motion to perfect this into ordinance form, or do we need to take?
If there's a second reading, yes.
Yes, okay. Okay, we've got that, so can we get a motion to perfect Bill number 6333?
He's got to read it first.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Yes. Can we get a second read of Bill 6333 by title only, please?
Number 6333, second reading and consideration for adoption and ordinance establishing a pay classification system for all full-time City of Brentwood employee positions and establishing an accompanying pay classification system for fiscal year 2021 and related matters which are contingent upon the annual budget appropriation and providing for the effective date of this ordinance.
Thank you.
Can I
Chair,
make a
entertain a
motion
motion. Go ahead.
I make a motion to perfect Bill 6333 into ordinance form.
So moved. Or second.
Thank you. Any further discussion on Bill 6333? Roll call, please. I'm sorry.
Just one quick question, logistics. If this passes, would the employees receive a lump sum for the retroactive amount back to 121? Would that just be coming in the next paycheck or in the next couple paychecks? Right, and then it would be basically whenever you can get it cut in, and,
I will do my best.
but it would be a lump sum that they're getting.
Right.
Okay, thank you. That's all I am, sorry.
Okay, roll call.
Alderman Plufka?
Yes.
Alderwoman Tice?
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims?
Yes.
Alderman Weggie?
Yes.
Alderman Gould?
Nope.
Alderman Lockmiller?
No.
Alderwoman O'Neill?
No.
Alderman Shelton?
Yes.
I vote of 5-3, the bill passes and will become ordinance number 4981.
Great, thank you, everybody. Great discussion. That gets us to bills number 6334 and 6335. I think those are somewhat moot in light of this. Do we need a motion to, okay, can we take them together, or do we need to have can I get a motion to withdraw bill numbers 6334 and 6335?
So moved.
Second?
And no, any other magical language to that, or is that good enough? Okay. And can we just do a voice vote on this? Okay. Any further discussion on removing those two from the agenda? Seeing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. That brings us to item 11, citizen comments. Anybody in the public care to address the board? Now is the time to do so. You will be given up to 3 minutes. Seeing none, we'll move on. We have no need for a closed meeting tonight. And so with that, the chair would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, everybody.
That was quick.
Meeting.
Yeah.